You know, the number one thing we hear people complain about right now is the traffic, just getting around Atlanta. And I get it. I sell real estate across this city, and I've put hundreds of thousands of miles on my car getting from one client meeting to the next. Like I'm in Buckhead at 10, I need to get to East Atlanta by noon and then back up to Roswell by 2, and every single route has something going on. Last week, I spent 3 hours on my car showing one house to one client. And for a long time, I really didn't think about any of it. I moved here and I just drove everywhere. But since coming out of the pandemic, the traffic here has started to affect quality of life in a way that's hard to ignore. Now, a lot of this ramped up because of the World Cup. The city put about $120 million into the downtown area alone, resurfacing streets, fixing sidewalks, upgrading signals, trying to get it all polished up before the tourists poured in. I guess they missed the memo. We've been full for a while now. But a lot of this needed to happen anyway, right? It just all hit at once, and it made the city a whole lot harder to move through. Hosting the world's biggest sporting event is only a small part of it, though. There's a lot going on right now with how we get around the city, and most of it you won't hear anywhere else. I'm Joshua Keene, here with my co-host, Stephen Scholl. This is Keene on Atlanta. And today, we're going deep on everything happening with Atlanta Transit in 2026 and beyond. We've got 5 stops, with some fascinating stuff along the way. So stick with us, because for each one, we're going to tell you what's being built, where it is, when it's happening, how much it costs, and most importantly, what all this means for your day-to-day commute. And we're kicking things off with the one everybody already feels, the roads. If you're moving to Atlanta or you already live here, the first thing you need to understand is that this city runs on cars. More than 80% of us drive to work alone, and only about 2% take public transit. I mean, Georgia has never really met a transit project it couldn't find a reason to underfund. Anyway, the point is, we don't have the more extensive rail or bus systems a lot of other cities our size lean on, which means when one major highway backs up, it doesn't just snarl that part of town, it ripples across everything. And the average commute is already a little over 30 minutes each way, and we all know rush hour can be a whole lot worse right now. So what's being done about all this? More roads, of course. And one of the biggest projects going is up on Georgia 400. If you drive it at all, from Lindbergh through Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, and up into Cumming, you already know what's happening up there. Now, I'm up that way a fair amount, getting around the north side of the city, and it's been rough. So what they're building is express toll lanes. It's the same idea as the I-85 express lanes if you've used those with a Peach Pass. New lanes you pay to use, built right into 400. They officially broke ground back in April after months of prep work, clearing trees, relocating utilities across a roughly 16-mile section from North Springs to McFarland Parkway. Now, the plan calls for 2 lanes in each direction for most of the way, and then 1 for the rest of the stretch. Now, the way this works, when traffic gets worse, the toll goes up. When it clears out, it comes back down. And the idea is that if you need to get somewhere at a certain time, you've at least got an option that's predictable instead of just hoping for the best. They're projecting about a 30% faster travel time during rush hour, which, if that holds up, is a pretty big deal. But it won't be open to the public until 2031, so this is going to be a 5-year nightmare in the meantime. And the cost of this one, right now they're projecting $4.6 billion, which makes it one of the largest public-private partnership projects in the entire country. But with how construction costs have been going, my guess is that this will end up north of $5 billion when it's all said and done. Either way, what this means is a private company is building it, running it, and collecting tolls for the next 50 years. So you're not paying for this in taxes. You're paying for it every time you choose to get to your destination a little quicker than you would have otherwise. There's also a bus rapid transit line built into this, with MARTA connections at Holcomb Bridge and North Point. So if that works, you've got another option along 400 that doesn't exist today. And all of this is part of something much bigger. There's a plan called the Top End that would put express lanes across the entire northern half of 285 through Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb counties. That's a roughly $25 billion project, and it's phased to start rolling out in 2028 and wraps up well into the 2030s. But if it all connects, you can move across the north side of the city without it being an all-day thing. And then you've got I-20 and I-285 on the west side. If you've been through that interchange, you know you just plan on being late. It's actually one of the worst truck bottlenecks in the country. They're already deep into a $1 billion rebuild, tearing out those left-hand exits that never made sense, putting in new flyover ramps, extending the merge lanes. The first flyovers open in 2027. The whole thing wraps up around 2030. And that's just the interchange. There's a separate job to rebuild 17 miles of the west side perimeter itself, paving that dates back to like the 1960s. Back in May, they shut the whole thing down for the weekend to start the project, and that's going to be the first of many to come. It turns out full weekend closures are how you take a 6-year job down to 3. And on the east side interchange, it's getting a similar rebuild. That one's actually closer to being done. Now, I use that side of 285 a lot because a lot of our clients are buying, selling, and investing on the east side right now. So everybody's got their worst stretch on the perimeter. Mine, Spaghetti Junction at rush hour. I avoid it like the plague. So let me know yours down in the comments, because if enough of us keep pointing out the same spots, maybe that's where the attention actually starts to go. Stephen and I, we sell real estate all across this city. That's why we pay attention to all of this: roads, transit, development. It affects where people want to live and what those neighborhoods are worth. So if you're looking to make a move anytime soon, that's what we do. Email us at koa@keenplus.com or check out our calendar link in the description. Because 400 and 285 are really just headline projects. For all the noise they get, there's a lot more happening that's worth knowing about. And a couple of them could end up mattering more than anything we've talked about so far. First up, there's a 41-mile stretch of truck-only lanes going in on I-75 south of the city. It's the first of its kind in the country, and it's designed to pull all that freight out of the regular traffic flow. Then there's the Stitch, which we covered in a lot more detail in another video. The plan there is to cap the downtown connector and knit downtown and midtown back together. And up in Buckhead, Hub 404, a similar cap over 400. But these are still working their way through funding and planning, and they're a completely different kind of infrastructure. Basically designed to create mobility and walkability by reconnecting parts of the city the highways carved apart instead of just pushing more cars through it. And if they come together, they could genuinely change the way we get around these parts of town. That's the hopeful version, right? The reality is, in the meantime, there's billions of dollars already in motion, billions more on the way, and years of orange cones, shutdowns, detours, and traffic that is going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. And the deeper I went into all of this, a few things really jumped out at me. Atlanta is one of the biggest logistic hubs in the United States. 3 of the top 10 bottlenecks in the entire country are right here, more than any other city. You'd think that would light a fire under us, but it really hasn't. I mean, the Braves built Truist Park and the entire Battery in less time than it takes to finish one of these interchanges. And a lot of why we move this slowly comes down to money. Georgia puts about $2 billion a year into roads. And you know how much goes into public transit? 0. Buses, rail, none of it. Now, Florida, in contrast, invests more than 10 times more per person than Georgia does. And they're not exactly known for their public transportation. But money is only part of what all this costs us. We talk about crime a lot in this city, like nonstop. And yet in 2024, more people died in traffic crashes across the metro than in homicides. And almost nobody talks about that. So what really gets me is how lopsided all of this is. In a city built almost entirely around the car with so little else to fall back on, more road is just about the only lever anyone knows how to pull. But we're trying to change that. We can't switch tracks on how a city runs overnight. Still, there's a lot happening in transit right now, more than people realize, and Steven's up to speed on all of it, so I'll let him take it from here.
Yeah, so Joshua took you through the roads, but there's a lot more Atlanta's trying to figure out when it comes to moving people around this city. And probably the biggest example of that is MARTA. And most people just assume the system this size gets state funding, but it doesn't. MARTA is the largest transit system in the country that has never received $1 from the state for operations. Every dollar it runs on comes from fares, federal money, and local sales tax. And despite that, there's actually a lot happening right now. And if you've ever taken MARTA to the airport or to a game downtown, you know it can work really well. But if you've ever waited 20 minutes for a train that is supposed to come in 10, you know the other side of the coin too. And a lot of that comes down to the trains. Some of the rail cars still running date all the way back to 1979. And this is actually coming from MARTA themselves. About 65% of their current delays are tied up to that old fleet. So it's not necessarily a scheduling problem, it's really an equipment problem. But they are replacing the entire fleet with new trains called the CQ400s being built by a Swiss company called Stadler. This is coming at about a $700 million price tag for 56 new train sets total. And the first ones just started running this month, right as the Cup kicked off. The full fleet, that's going to be rolling out through 2029. The trains are also going to be having open gangways so you can actually walk the full length of the train, so you're going to have more room and better flow after big events, which is going to be very necessary because right now it takes about 45 minutes to clear a station after a game at the Mercedes-Benz. They're going to also be adding charging ports, real-time displays, and a police officer on every new train when they launch, which, if you follow the safety conversation around MARTA at all, this is a big deal. And on the bus side, MARTA rolled out a completely redesigned bus network back in April 18th. It's going to have 81 routes, which is actually down from 113, but these routes will be more direct. The big change here is frequency. There'll be 3 times as many corridors that now have 15-minute service. So instead of actually planning your whole day around when the bus shows up, it starts to feel like something you could actually just use. And they've also rolled out MARTA Reach back on March 7th, which is an on-demand transit system. You actually just request a ride within one of 12 zones, and it connects you into the system. So if you're not near a bus line, you're not completely cut off. And then we have Better Breeze. You can actually now tap a bank card or your phone at the fare gate instead of needing a Breeze card. It sounds small, but if you've ever really stood around waiting at the station trying to figure out where to load that card, you know what I'm talking about. And the new fare gates should actually help fare invasion too, which is also a big part of that safety conversation, which I mentioned earlier. And one more on this, and then we'll actually move on. The A-Line train. This is Atlanta's first real rapid bus transit line. It's going to be running from downtown through Summerhill to the BeltLine Southside Trail. It's about 5 miles, 14 stops, but they have dedicated lanes, so it's not sitting in traffic with everyone else. This should be launching this summer. But if you ride MARTA, what's the one thing that would get you actually to use it more? Let me know. Now, all this does cost money, and a lot of this ties back to the More MARTA sales tax, which back in 2016, Atlanta voters approved a half-penny sales tax, which is going to be totaling about $2.7 billion over the 40 years. But it's not the state, it's Atlanta funding its own transit. Also, they're putting about $1 billion into rehabbing stations across the system. 5 Points, which is the main hub downtown, it's already got new lighting, new floors, new ceilings, and this is all done just in time for the Cup. The question is whether any of this changes how people actually feel about using it day to day. Because along the rail lines in Midtown, Buckhead, then the airport, it can actually be very convenient. But outside of that, most people are actually still using their cars. And that's kind of where the BeltLine comes in. So MARTA covers the main corridors, right? We've got north to south, east to west, and the BeltLine is actually trying to connect everything in between. And if you spend any time on it, walking, running, biking, you already know exactly what it is. It's 22 miles of old rail corridors looping around the city, connecting more than 45 neighborhoods. And on a nice weekend, it's packed. Over 2 million visits a year. But what's actually being built right now? The big one just opened. The next section on the south side. That's about 3 miles of new trail running from Pittsburgh Yards through Peoplestown, Summerhill, and over to Boulevard. That was about $30 million in federal funding behind it. And now that it's open, you've got about 18 miles of continuous paved trail for the first time, which is connecting 36 neighborhoods. So if you live in Pittsburgh or Summerhill or Peoplestown, you can now get on the trail and go all the way up to Piedmont Park without getting in your car. That did not exist a year ago. So if you know the East Side Trail at all, though, that's the stretch from Piedmont Park down through Ponce City Market into Reynoldstown, you've seen exactly how it changes the way people get around. We've got thousands of people on that thing every day. Scooters, e-bikes, people commuting short distances in a way Atlanta really never had before. And the neighborhoods along it have changed a lot over the last several years. More density, more apartments, more retail, places where you can actually walk out the door and actually go somewhere without thinking about parking. But after the South Side Trail, next up is the Northeast Trail, which is segment 3. This one would actually connect a MARTA station, Lindbergh, to the BeltLine for the first time. And this is going to be about a $42 million project with federal funding. But heavy construction is just getting underway, and they're already estimating about 42 months to build. So we're only looking at, 2029 before that opens. And the completion of the full 22-mile loop, they're saying 2030. So we're almost there. So the trail itself is getting close. But it still mostly works for short distances, right? So like getting between neighborhoods, meeting friends, running errands, it doesn't really replace your car if you're trying to get across the city. And that gets into the bigger question here, transit. Because the original idea wasn't just the trail, it was rail, light rail actually, around the full loop connecting into the MARTA system. Also, back in 2016, voters approved about $1.3 billion for the more MARTA sales tax, specifically for the BeltLine transit. And the full plan to complete it, that was about $3.5 billion. And as of right now, there are 0 miles in service, no confirmed funding to complete it, no clear timelines. Now, inevitably, someone's going to ask, where did all the money go? And that's definitely a fair question. And that's a real conversation happening right now, whether the light rail is even going to be the right answer. We'll get deeper into that in a future episode. Now, I know people have strong opinions on this. The light rail on the BeltLine, or is the trail enough? I'd love to keep that conversation going in the comments, but here's where I land. The trail on its own is great. Look at what happened along the East Side Trail, right? It went in, and restaurants, apartments, retail, all followed it. A walking and biking path did all of that. Now imagine that a train goes in. That's a completely different signal to developers, to businesses, to neighborhoods along it. And that's the question we really haven't answered yet, right? But there's a lot more BeltLine that we haven't even gotten to yet, right? We've got Murphy Crossing, the West Side Trail extension, what's happening around Lindbergh, Quarry Yards, and actually what the West Side Reservoir Park will mean for that entire area. We'll be coming back to that in future episodes. But right now, the BeltLine is changing how parts of the city move, just not the whole city yet. And whether it makes that jump is probably one of the bigger questions for Atlanta over the next 10 years. Now, there's a real debate about whether the future here is actually fixed rail or something else entirely, and that's actually playing out right now. All right, so remember back when self-driving cars felt like the far-off future? Well, guess what? They're already here. Waymo launched here last June, and that, if you don't know, is Google's self-driving car service, which runs through the Waymo app or Uber. You request a ride, a car shows up with nobody in the front seat, and it takes you to where you're going. The first time you see one, it's a little weird, I promise, but it becomes more normal pretty fast. And right now they cover about 65 square miles, Buckhead down through Midtown, downtown, Old Fourth Ward, east of Decatur, south of Capitol View. And if you're in that area, you've probably seen them. It's the white Jaguar, sensors on top, no driver. And guess what? Uber CEO actually said that Waymo in Atlanta has been busier than 99% of their human drivers. So people are using them. But I'm curious, have you taken one yet? Because I have. I've also heard horror stories, so let me know below how it went for you. Now, on to the public side. There's something smaller but interesting that launched back in May, ATL Spoke, which is actually a free driverless shuttles from MARTA West End Station to the BeltLine Southwest Trail at Lee and White. They're running every 12 to 15 minutes, 7 days a week, and that right there was a 12-month pilot program from a $1.75 million grant. Some people see it as a step away from the light rail, but the BeltLine's position is they need all of it. Rail, autonomous, infill stations, not just one versus the other. But these are two completely different models. ATL Spoke is public, small, plugged into MARTA, while Waymo is private, already at scale, but no public input, right? And Atlanta is basically running both experiments at the exact same time. And it's not just Waymo. We've got Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA. Every major tech company and automaker is building toward an autonomous future. Cars, semi-trucks, last-minute delivery systems. The future of how people and goods move is probably going in this direction. And with Atlanta being one of the biggest logistics hubs in the country, it's right in the middle of all of it. The big thing they actually don't do yet, though, is highways. So there's no freeway driving, which means no going to the airport, no getting to the suburbs, nothing much past the core city. Now, they have said that Atlanta is actually next for those freeway capabilities, but there's obviously no timeline. So for anything beyond that 65 square mile radius, you're still driving, taking MARTA, or actually calling a regular Uber. But here's what people miss. Rideshare is already how a lot of Atlanta works. MARTA doesn't get you there. Guess what? You're calling Uber. That's been true for years. If my Uber starts driving itself, that's not really a new system. That's just what I already do, minus the driver. And from a real estate perspective, which is how Joshua and I think about most things here, that starts to change the map. A 30 to 45-minute commute where you're not actually driving opens up neighborhoods that didn't make sense before. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out yet, but it is coming. But guess what? There's one place in Atlanta where transit already works pretty well. And most of us use it without even thinking about it. Joshua knows all about that one, so he'll close it out from here.
Yeah, Stephen's right. The airport. Hartsfield-Jackson is the busiest in the world, over 100 million passengers a year. Now, if you're flying domestic, it's pretty smooth. You land, you grab your bags, and you can be on MARTA and into the city in about 20 minutes. Most cities cannot say that. It's one of the things we do better than almost anywhere. But I know everyone's a little different on this one. When you're catching a flight, are you taking MARTA? Are you calling an Uber? Are you relying on a friend? Or are you driving yourself? Let us know in the comments. But no matter how you get here, we all use the plane train, the thing that moves you between concourses. It's only about 3 miles long, but it carries over 250,000 passengers a day. It's the most heavily traveled people mover in any airport in the world. And most of us just think of it as the way we get to our gate. And that system is getting upgraded right now. They're investing $300 million, adding 63 new energy efficient cars and building a new turnaround tunnel under the domestic terminal. And when it's fully up and running, capacity goes from about 10,000 passengers per hour to 12,000. Wait times between concourses drop from a minute and 45 seconds to 90 seconds. And those new cars are all going in right now. That's just the plane train. The airport overall is in the middle of an $11.6 billion project called ATL Next. They're doing new parking. They're expanding concourses, and all of that should be rolling out over the next several years. Now, none of this is flashy, but it's the kind of stuff that keeps 100 million people moving without everything breaking down. But where it gets a little clunky is on the international side. The international terminal sits on the other end of the airport, and there's no direct MARTA connection. You have to shuttle over to the domestic terminal first. It works, but it adds time. And if you've never been here before, it's not exactly intuitive. And with the World Cup in full swing, it kind of matters. You've got hundreds of thousands of international visitors in and out of here for the first time. And the thing that they're experiencing is figuring out how to get from their gate to the city and then back again. The domestic side of that is great. The international side still has a gap. And knowing Atlanta, we'll probably fix it around the time we're bidding on the next Olympics. So that's what's happening right now. A lot of money, a lot of projects, a lot of it hitting at the same time. Road construction, MARTA upgrades, new sections of the BeltLine, autonomous vehicles, the airport, all moving us forward. Some of this you're going to feel right away. Some of it is years out, and some of it we'll just have to wait and see. You know, Atlanta once had the most extensive streetcar networks in the country. Back in 1928, you could ride from East Point to North Druid Hills and only change trains once. This city knew how to move people. Then we tore it all out and started over, which, if you know Atlanta, is kind of what we do. Now, there's a lot of people trying to build it back, and we're going to keep covering it all. So if you want to stay in the conversation, the city, the market, how all of this connects, subscribe so you don't miss out. I'm Joshua Keene. This is Keen on Atlanta, where you belong. Thanks for staying a while, and we'll see you on the next one.